Sometimes the capacity for cognitive dissonance just amazes me. And this is definitely one of those instances where my guy here is saying that Ethiopians are Moses' children with a with the Cushite woman, his Cushite wife, Zipporah. Okay, understand even if you look at biblical history and you go back, starting with your Jesus and who begat who and how long they live and when they begat, you're going to get Moses happening in or around the late 1300s, well, early 1300s BCE, late 1400s BCE is when you get your story of Moses. And what you're trying to say is that there was no one in Ethiopia at the time frame of the late and early 14th and 15th century BCE. How can you even phrase your mind, get your mind to even contemplate that when we have absolute proof that the kings of Egypt fought against the Aksumite people and the people before it was actually the Aksumite Empire, that they fought the Sudanese people, the Cushite people fought against the Egyptians before Moses was ever even conceived of. You see, archaeological history does not support these frivolous claims of your Bible. And this is where the cognitive dissonance comes in because you have to force your narrative to fit into a history that we know exists, but you force a narrative that goes against that actual history. And I don't know where your second statement comes in. Coward Christians avoiding truth there makes this channel in a ways too frivolous and irrelevant. Unless you're taking a racist aspect to this, where you're saying that coward Christians don't want to accept that uh, Moses' wife was supposedly a Cushite woman, which would have made her black, that Moses himself would have been a man of color. Now you're interjecting race into a book for a time frame of people who did not look at race as a factor. It was more about tribes and ethnicities than it was about the color of your skin. But you're making that available you're making that a part of your stance today in the understanding of this book because you said all the BS mysteries you speak of is already written in this book and all others are copycats of sorts. How can the Bible be the original when it wasn't around when the Egyptians were writing on their walls? It wasn't around when they was writing on papyrus scrolls. It wasn't around when the Indus people were writing their scrolls of the Vedas. It wasn't around when the Sumerians and Babylonians and Akkadians and Assyrians inscribed on tablets and on the walls the stories of the Atrahasis, the story of the flood, the story of the creation of man, the story of wars between tribes, the stories of sacrifices made to gods and exoduses and all these other things, the Lelutus. Uh, they were already writing these stories before a Hebrew or Israelite was ever concocted in time. If you actually research your history, you will find that there was no such thing as a Hebrew, no such thing as an Israelite until the Meneptah Stele, which is the first mentioning of an Israelite. And that, my sir, is in the early 15th century BCE, which would be around 1440, 1460 BCE. And that is the first mentioning. And in that mentioning, they're talking about them being conquered. About there was the first mentioning of Yahweh, the oldest one that we have thus far, which is also found in Egypt, is talking about the nomadic people who worship Yahweh. Now, people will automatically assume that this means the Israelites, but yet let's not forget that the Canaanites also worship Yahweh. Yahweh was the son of El and Asherah in the Canaanite pantheon. So it could have just meant the Canaanite people who were close to the sea, who were also somewhat nomadic, especially during the Bronze Age collapse. But even before then, they were somewhat a nomadic tribe. They did have settlements. So you don't understand history, or maybe you do, but you're forcing your biblical narrative that doesn't fit to history to try to fit into your book. And anytime you do that, you're creating a false image within your own self and your own mind. And therefore, you can never be free to truly think above and beyond what they have given you. And you're actually trying to take what they have given you and make that into something that fits your racial diversity today, the system of culture that we have today, and the hardships of more recent history that you can identify with, and trying to make your book fit into that so that it could be your book because you was trained to have it Jesus as your God. And because of that training, you're trying to hold on to it so deeply that you want to force the narrative to fit into a way that it villainizes those who utilize the book to destroy and kill and enslave people, and try to make it something that it's actually a holy book and it fits. They just have had a misunderstanding or misinterpretation, or they stole it, or they added, or whatever. If that is the case, then you actually have no idea what is supposed to be true and what is not. Because if I had a book and I used it to corrupt and to steal and to maim, why would I ever give you the actual truth of that book? That book would still be a secret and you would never know, because I would still be using it to control you. So you have a great day. And always remember, you got to free yourself to be yourself, because your greatness is non negotiable. The journey, the vibration.